It's Friday, and you know what that means. It's time for another Quick Queries TechHelp video brought to you by AccessLearningZone.com. I'm your instructor, Richard Rost. Today's Quick Query is number 35. What's a quick query? Well, it's a video that contains questions and answers about a lot of other little things that maybe don't go into their own video. So I put them all together into a Quick Queries video. So let's take a look at the first one for today. We're going to start off with a question from Kenneth in Clarence, New York. Not far from where I used to live in Buffalo. One of my silver members, Kenneth says, do you suggest limiting the amount of data that I would add to a combo box? How many selections in a combo box is too many? So this actually depends on a lot of factors. Are you using the database locally? In other words, just on your computer? Are you the only user? Are you using it on a network, a local area network in your office? Are you using it over the internet, for example? If you got, you're back in an SQL server, because how and where you're using it really depends, it really changes the answer to this question. If you're just the only user, it's a database on your machine. Yeah, you could have a few thousand items in there without a problem because it doesn't have to pull it across a network. If you're working across a local area network and you've built a database that you're sharing with a bunch of people, you got a couple thousand items in there, it may take a few seconds for that combo box to load up all its values. And if it's running online, we've seen, Sammy and I did some tests, and loading up a couple of combo boxes, even with a few dozen items, can really slow things down. So yes, in that case, I would try to limit the amount of data in the combo box. Plus, to be honest, if you've got more than 1,000 items, I mean, who wants to scroll through that many items? Yeah, you can start typing in the first couple characters and it'll bring you down there. But it just becomes unruly after you get more than, I'd say, a few hundred items in it. So what can you do? There's a couple things you could do. You could filter that combo box. Or if it's something like a product that falls into product categories, you could set up what I call cascading combo boxes. This is where you've got multiple levels of combo boxes. For example, you got the state, and then when you pick the state, that will filter the next box for city, so you only see cities from that state. The same thing works with products and product categories, right? You pick the category first, like motherboards or hard drives, and then the product combo box will filter down to just those items. I even did this video lately, which is a little more complicated. This is more of a developer level video where you can do multiple cascading combo boxes. So you got country, state, county, city, street. You could drill straight down through 5 of them. That was a little more complex. And this video, again, a little bit more complicated. It's developer level, but this one will show you how to filter the results in the combo box based on typing. And you can type in characters that appear anywhere, not just the beginning. Because the way that a combo box works by default is you have to type in the beginning of the data that's in here. But with this video, I'll show you how you can type in anything. So if I typed in WIL, William Riker would show up. So check out these videos. They're a little more complicated. They require a little bit of VBA. Well, even the beginner one does. They're the first cascading combo boxes one does. It requires just a little tiny bit of VBA because you have to automate this. You have to fire an event once the first combo box or the filter is set. But that's my recommendation. Again, how many items in the combo box, that's up to you. Whatever you find usable as far as the number of items in there and what's working for you on your setup. So hope this answers your question. Anders says, just a small detail. When I'm faced with unfamiliar code, I often see superfluous comments. In fact, they don't help me at all. No comments needed when the code speaks for itself. Good code comments explain why things are done, but only if it's not obvious, never what is done. I used to agree with you 100%. I used to never comment my code because I figured I'm the only one who works on my projects. I don't work with teams. I don't share my code with anybody else. So I figured, why do I need comments? And so I'm going to say about 10 years ago, I decided to update a database that I hadn't worked on in a while. And I'm like, what was I thinking here? I didn't quite understand what I had done. So now I use comments so future me can understand what past me did. Even if the code is obvious, you still sometimes, a block of code doesn't necessarily read as easy as a line that describes what it does. Plus, honestly, if you're looking at a bunch of code, especially if you're looking for errors and stuff, and your brain sometimes tends to get like code blindness. And so not only is this green and it shows up easier to see than the rest of the text, but it's a nice way to not have to think and, okay, this allows the user to pause execution. So while I kind of agree with you, I kind of don't. I do like putting comments in now. I never used to when I was younger, but now I comment a lot. I got in the habit because of teaching and because of trying to figure out stuff that I had written 10 years ago. And I'm trying to do myself a favor 10 years from now. So I like comments, but I can appreciate it if you don't. So a couple comments on my reset database video from a couple days ago, which teaches you how to blank all the data out of it and reset all the auto numbers. Shadow Dragon says, I've gotten in the habit of adding a subroutine to the close database button that asks the users if they want to back up the database, run some VBA code and all that stuff. It protects me during the development process. Yeah, I see. I tend to not put the onus of backing up the data on the users, right? Because literally they're just getting a front end file with no data in it, or just temporary data for processing on their machine. All of the important data resides on the server and the back end. So I think that's the administrator's job. The database developer, that's your responsibility to make sure that's backed up, preferably with an automated nightly routine. But yeah, that's what I do. But I mean, if you've got individual users with their own databases with their own data in it, then yeah, that's a good idea. And yeah, Richard from Concord, what is this database that everyone wants? Now people need answers. Texan Moore says, great video, thank you. I would still like to know how to copy a record and copy the auto number. This seems impossible. Well, again, auto numbers are really not for you. You really shouldn't have to worry about them. But it does occasionally happen where you might accidentally delete a record. Let's say you delete an order number, let's say you delete the order record, but there's still child order detail records. And so you want to replace that order. It is possible. There is a trick. You can do it with an append query. I've got a whole separate video on exactly how to do this. So I don't recommend it, but if you need to do it because you messed something up, then you can do this. Don't rely on those auto numbers. They're only used for relationships and making sure that records are unique. But you shouldn't really care what they are. It could be 6, it could be 6,522. All right, but if you do delete one and you need to replace it, there is a trick. Remcop 1989 says, so using auto numbers as quote number is not the way to go. Well, I recommend against it. I recommend using your own quote number, your own product number, your own invoice number, your own customer number. I don't usually recommend letting the end users, or not the end users, the customers see the auto numbers. I mean, you can if you want to, and that's the way that I teach my beginner lessons, just to keep things simple. But as you get a little more advanced and you want to build a more professional system, it's a good idea not to let people see those numbers. The main reason why is because, if you got your customer database, let's say, and you print the customer number on your invoices, and you're using an auto number, and the customer gets the number 4. Okay, 6 months go by, and someone they know, let's say, gets the customer number 7. Well, now they know that you've only added 3 customers in those 6 months. Or order numbers. The same customer places an order. He's got order number 13. And 2 months later, now he's got order number 17. So, it kind of gives things away. It reminds me of the German tank problem. During World War II, the Allies would capture German tanks that weren't completely destroyed, and they would be able to see the serial numbers on some of the parts. And based on that, they could roughly tell how many tanks the Germans were making, because they could see what serial numbers were available and what were missing. And so it's the same kind of thing in business, right? You don't want your customers to know too much about your business. I talk about this in detail in this video. Auto numbers, good or bad, why you should use an auto number as the primary key in your table, but you don't want to necessarily make it visible to customers and such. And here's another very popular video, auto numbers and how they're not for you. You shouldn't care about what they are because they're only meaningful inside the database for tracking relationships and making sure records are unique. And I think on both of these pages, there's links to other videos that teach you some different solutions for what you can do for customer-facing data. For example, I have a video on how to create your own customer code so they can't see the ID. And here's one on sequential numbering. What I recommend you do for your customers, for example, for invoice numbers, is give them sequential invoice numbers. So each customer would have invoice 1001, 1002, 1003, and every customer would have their own unique one. And you can match that with their customer code that you create. So, your customer might be customer ID 565. That's just whatever number you assign to them, right? And then so their invoice number would be 5651001, 5651002, and so on. That's a more professional numbering system. And these videos will explain how to do all of that stuff. And finally today, Troopers Travel says there's only one captain of the Enterprise that ain't Picard. Hey, those are fighting words. Those are fighting words. I love Picard. I grew up with Picard mostly because I remember watching the original Star Trek when I was a kid, but I didn't quite understand it. I was born in 72, so I watched reruns. But Next Generation came on in 87, so I'd have been 13-ish. And so Picard that was awesome. The special effects were amazing at the time. So yes, I do love Kirk and Spock and Bones. I mostly love the original episodes because of the triumvirate, right? That Kirk, Spock, McCoy dynamic. That's what made that show special. But Next Generation's where it's at, man. Sorry. I'll fight you on that one. All right, folks, that's going to do it for today's Quick Queries. Hope you learned something. Live long and prosper, my friends. I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button right now and give me a like. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel, which is completely free. And make sure you click that bell icon and select all to receive notifications whenever I post a new video. Do you need help with your Microsoft Access project? Whether you need a tutor, a consultant, or a developer to build something for you, check out my Access Developer Network. It's a directory I put together personally of Access experts who can help with your project. Visit my website to learn more. Any links or other resources that I mentioned in the video can be found in the description text below the video. Just click on that Show More link right there. YouTube's pretty good about hiding that, but it's there. Just look for it. Now, if you have not yet tried my free Access Level 1 course, check it out now. It covers all the basics of Microsoft Access, including building forms, queries, reports, tables, all that stuff. It's over 4 hours long. You can find it on my website or my YouTube channel. I'll include a link below you can click on. And did I mention it's completely free? And if you like Level 1, Level 2 is just $1. That's it. And it's free for members of my YouTube channel at any level. Speaking of memberships, if you're interested in joining my channel, you get all kinds of awesome perks. Silver members get access to all of my extended cut TechHelp videos, and there's hundreds of them by now. They also get one free beginner class each month, and yes, those are from my full courses. Gold members get the previous perks plus access to download all of the sample databases that I build in my TechHelp videos. Plus, you get access to my code vault where I keep tons of different functions and all kinds of source code that I use. And gold members get one free expert class every month after completing the beginner series. Platinum members get all of the previous perks, plus they get all of my beginner courses, all of them from every subject. And you get one free advanced or developer class every month after finishing the expert series. And you can become a diamond sponsor and have your name listed on the sponsor page on my website. So that's it. Once again, my name is Richard Rost. Thank you for watching this video brought to you by AccessLearningZone.com. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something today. Live long and prosper, my friends. I'll see you next time.